All right, so for section 4.2, we're going to talk about trig functions. And the first thing that we want to talk about before we get into actual trig functions is the unit circle. And I have posted a PDF under week 1 on our class page that shows the unit circle with all the angles and radians and so on. So if you want to look at that as I'm discussing through all this, you're welcome to. Okay, but the radius, or this unit circle, has a radius of 1, and the center is at the origin. Okay. All right. So what does that mean? Well, let's just look at a rough sketch anyways. So the center of the circle is at the origin, and then here would be 1, 0, here would be 0, 1, this point over here would be negative, well, if I can draw it, would be negative 1, 0, and then this down here would be 0, negative 1. Okay. All right. But if we wanted to talk about it in terms of what the unit circle looks like and kind of its significance, we can also talk about these points in terms of radians. Okay. So we have 0 there. This up here would be pi over 2. This over here is pi. And then this is 3 pi over 2. And then that leads us back to 2 pi, okay? And you'll see this on your unit circle, all right? And so what we can do and what helps us use these, or be able to use the trig functions in the unit circle, let's say that we have a point out here, t, okay? So t is right here, all right? So what I can do, all right, so what this allows me to do is to wrap, say this is a real number line that's going to t. Well, then I could wrap that around to where it is on the circle, and t corresponds to this point. Okay, so what I've done is I have wrapped that. All right, what that allows me to do now is to be able to figure out what central angle corresponds to the number t, and it doesn't matter what number t is because I can always wrap it onto the unit circle. Okay, so now let's look at trig functions that go along with that. So let's let t be a real number, and let x and y be the point on the circle that corresponds to t. Okay. So out of this drawing, I know the drawing's not much, but we'll say that x and y are right there. Okay. Then we know that all these things are true, and these are things that you definitely want to have written down and close by, that the sine of t would give you the y coordinate. The cosine of t would give you the x coordinate. Then the tangent of t is y over x. Cosecant of t is 1 over y. And then secant of t is 1 over x. And cotangent of t is x over y. Okay. Whoop, I deleted all of that. Sorry about that. So we have tangent of t is y over x. So cotangent of t is x over y. So you definitely want to have these written down just for you to be able to look at and reference along with the unit circle. All right. Now let's establish another definition that goes along with trig functions. So a function is periodic when a positive real number exists such that the following is true here. So we can say that the function of t plus c results back to f of t. Okay, and that's not to say c is 0, okay? That's not what I'm referring to. All right, but let's say, so sine and cosine have periods of 2 pi. Okay, so that means that every time you go 2 pi, you're actually going back full circle to where you originally were. Okay, so as an example, the sine of 8 pi is equal to the sine of 6 pi plus 2 pi. Okay, which is just the sine of 2 pi, right? So we're viewing 6 pi as c here. All right. And the sine of 2 pi is 0. Okay? So what that means is the sine of 2 pi, 4 pi, 6 pi, 8 pi, 10 pi, 12 pi, and so on would all be 0. Okay? So that's how we can use periods to be able to easily distinct, if it's a larger value of pi, we only want to know what it is in between 0 and 2 pi because that's full circle. Okay? All right, so then some of these functions are even and some are odd. Okay, even functions, I'll show you what that means in just a moment, and then we'll talk about odd functions. Okay, so the even functions are cosine and secant. Okay, those are deemed to be even functions. All right, so that means that the cosine of negative t would always be equal to the cosine of t. Okay, so that's a way to look at that being odd and even, or being even, and then you can do the same for secant. Okay, and I'll show you a more graphic understanding of that in just a moment. All right, so then that means that sine, cosecant, tangent, and cotangent are all odd. Okay. All right, so what does that mean from an algebraic sense? That says that the sine of negative t is equal to the negative sine of t. Okay. So let me show you a graphic understanding of this. Not that I'm the best artist, but we'll do what we can here. All right. So I think everybody has probably seen it, but just in case you haven't, the cosine curve and the sine curve. Okay, so this would be the cosine curve. So the cosine, so this is pi over 2. And we'll go to pi, and we'll go on out to 3 pi over 2. So again, this is for cosine. So we have negative pi over 2, Then we have negative pi, and then out here we have negative 3 pi over 2. Okay? All right, and so the cosine starts at 0, 1. So here's 1. Down here would be negative 1. Okay, and it always has a range of 1 and negative 1. So the cosine curve does this. Okay. So it looks something like that. Okay. So at pi, it's at negative 1. At negative pi, it's at negative 1, etc. Okay. All right. So if we look at the cosine of negative pi, so I want to look here. Well, that's at negative 1, and that is equal to the cosine of pi, which is here. So that means it is even. Okay. So that's what it means to be an even function. All right. But then looking at the sine curve. Okay, and doing the same thing from negative pi over 2, and we'll go all the way out to negative 3 pi over 2, and this is pi over 2, pi, and then 3 pi over 2. Okay, again, 1, negative 1. All right, so the sine curve starts at the origin and does this. Okay. All right, so it does something like that. I know that's a horrible drawing, but you get the idea of what it's doing. Okay. So then, if we look at the sine of negative pi over 2, all right, we're at negative 1. Well, the sine of pi over 2 is 1, as you can see here. So to make that negative 1, we would just have to put a negative in front of it. Okay, so that is how those are deemed to be even and odd. All right, we're going to do a lot with trig functions in this course, so this is a valuable concept to be able to understand, especially the unit circle and the periods. Definitely focus on those, and if you have any questions, please feel free to email me, and have a great rest of your day.